There is no winning for him in this scenario.
Yeah, if you look at the coalition that elected Biden in 2020, it was obviously mostly Democrats, but he won some independents and even some Never Trump Republicans because he was running against Donald Trump. And that coalition is fraying at the edges. And this is the perfect example of that, where if he's going to keep the progressive wing of his party, especially younger voters who are very concerned about what they see going on in Gaza, that might alienate some of the people on the right of his coalition who have still stalwartly support Israel.
I want to go back to what the president said to CNN, because I think we missed a couple of words at the beginning of his statement. If they go into Rafah, he said, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah. Gregory, is this a change in policy, or is this just open diplomacy, using, in this case, the media for this platform?
Yeah, so this comes just days after that Congress approved a new aid package for Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan, about $18 billion for Israel alone. And Congress obviously approved that spending with the expectation that it would go very quickly to help Israel in this war against Gaza. What the president's saying is, look, and you get this issue with many of these proxy wars, is what kind of aid are you going to give? In terms of munitions, are they offensive weapons or are they defensive weapons? The president's saying Iron Dome, that very sophisticated system that can prevent air attacks like the ones that we saw from Iran recently, that's still something that we want to support. But the bombs and the artillery that could be used and could have a high potential for civilian casualties in Gaza is not something that he wants to support. And so that's the message to the Israeli War Cabinet in terms of, like, change how you approach this campaign in Gaza, or else we can't support it.
Well, it's worth pointing out that supplemental funding, to your point, is replenishment for defensive operations, including the Iron Dome. That is where all those billions of dollars were intended to go. But of course, there has still been a lot of ire in Congress over President Biden's decision, especially from Republican members, including the congressman from Wisconsin, Brian Stile, who spoke with us earlier today on Bloomberg.
The president made the wrong move in trying to prevent that shipment of weapons that are authorized by the United States House of Representatives, the Senate, and the president himself from being able to be distributed. The action by the president is actually a step in the complete wrong direction.
And Kate, we've also heard from the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, who suggested President Biden maybe was having a senior moment in saying this in his interview last night. And you've even had calls from some in the Republican Party, including from Senator Tom Cotton, for the House to impeach Biden over this.
I've seen some pretty strong rhetoric, like you're saying, and I think Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, I think his statement today was basically this is going to help Hamas. You know, this is the president being pro-Hamas, if you will. So some really charged rhetoric has been, continues to be injected into this debate. But it's not just Republicans that have criticized the president over this. You saw some of the Democrats who have taken a strong pro-Israel stance, like Senator John Fetterman, a Democrat of Pennsylvania, who has really been very pro-Israel since the October 7th massacres there. And, he said that he disagreed with the president about this. So it isn't just a matter of Republicans piling on, a president of a different party, but you're seeing even some divisions continuing within the president's own party.
We heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu earlier today, released a video on X saying, in part, today we are much stronger, we are determined, and we are united in order to defeat our enemies and those who want to destroy us. If we need to stand alone, we will stand alone. Gregory, if that is the outcome here, then does Joe Biden lose on both sides? Getting back to where Kailey started this discussion, he's already upset progressives. If Benjamin Netanyahu is going to go ahead with what he's doing anyway, what's the point of all this? Yeah, well, we'll have to see, because immediately after posting that on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, he gave an interview to Dr. Phil McGraw of TV fame, of all people, saying a little bit more conciliatory remarks, saying, look, Joe Biden and I have been friends for 40 years. Yeah. We're going to work this out. I trust that we can figure out an accommodation here. But he still is obviously very hawkish in how he's going to approach this war, and nothing short of eliminating every single last
best Hamas fighter is going to be satisfying to him. And I think that's President Biden's goal as well, but also understanding that there are these civilian issues that need to be addressed by whatever war plan Israel comes up with.
So obviously this is a large headache for the incumbent president and one who is seeking re-election in November. But the man he's running against has some headaches of his own. Donald Trump in court in New York again today. He actually left without saying anything to the cameras, which is a bit unusual, differing from what we've seen so far in the few weeks of this trial. But Gregory, this was a second day of testimony from Stormy Daniels, a lot of cross-examination today as the defense questions her description of her encounter with Trump, the sexual encounter specifically, getting into various details. Is this something that ultimately her testimony could backfire on the prosecution and backfire on the idea that this was going to potentially hurt Trump politically?
Yeah, this was supposed to be a case, at least legally, that was all about whether or not Trump and the Trump Organization falsified business records to cover up hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. But for a case that's ostensibly about the paperwork, we've spent an awful lot of time going into the really sordid details about what happened in that hotel room in 2006. And, of course, that's what's going to capture the popular imagination. There's no television cameras in that courtroom, so that might blunt the political impact. But certainly late-night comics, news programs like this one, it's sensational testimony, and you really can't ignore it. And it's something that I think, when we talk about the character question, it's something that the American people are going to have to decide whether or not they believe Stormy Daniels, whether they believe Donald Trump, and if they do believe one or the other, how that should factor into their vote in November.
All the while, Donald Trump continues to hold sway over the Republican conference in the House. And after, at this time yesterday, when you were walking us live through this motion to vacate exercise with Marjorie Taylor Greene, many thought that the Speaker of the House was in the clear. He survived this attempted ouster. Then Donald Trump goes on Truth Social and writes, with a majority of one shortly growing to 3 or 4, we're not in a position of voting on a motion to vacate. At some point, we may very well be. So to what extent does he continue to drive the agenda in the House?
Oh, I think to a large extent. I mean, there's been numerous examples where you see Republicans in Congress, sort of taking their marching orders, if you will, from former President Trump. And I think as the campaigns heat up and we get into campaign season and things on Capitol Hill sort of grind to a halt anyway, just naturally when everybody's out on the campaign trail, I think there's going to be a lot of taking cues from Trump, even given the scandals that are, you're just talking about with the testimony today and this week. He continues to be this dominant force in particularly in the Republican side of the aisle.